Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to tackle a really huge challenge, something absolutely central to current affairs, achieving a net zero economy.
It's definitely front and center.
And for our listeners, particularly you UPSC aspirants focusing on these, critical contemporary topics for mains, and maybe keeping an eye on prelims too, this deep dive is, frankly, essential.
Absolutely.
We've pulled together key insights from the Hindu to give you a solid grasp of India's energy transition.
Right. And our mission here really is to explore that foundational shift, electrification, and then really unpack how hydrogen and nuclear power have to be integrated. It's crucial for India's sustainable energy future.
Okay, so let's get into it. The first big idea, I suppose, is that this net zero transition, it's not just swapping out fossil fuel power plants for solar panels or wind turbines, is it?
Not at all. It's much deeper. It's a complete reimagining of how we use energy everywhere.
And a lot of that current fossil fuel use isn't even for electricity, right?
Exactly. That's a key point. So much of it is used directly for heat in industry, or even as like the basic ingredients the molecules needed for processes.
You give example.
Sure. Think about steel production. You need carbon, usually from coal, or ammonia for fertilizers. That hydrogen almost always comes from natural gas currently.
Okay, so direct electrification just won't work for everything.
Precisely. And that's where hydrogen becomes so interesting. It's got this dual function.
Dual function.
Yeah, it can be an energy carrier, store and transport energy like electricity can. But critically, it can also be a direct feedstock substitute. It can replace those molecules we get from fossil fuels now.
Like in the steel example, using hydrogen instead of carbon.
Exactly that. Hydrogen can reduce the iron ore instead of carbon, and the main byproduct is just water, much cleaner.
So hydrogen integration is basically non-negotiable for some sectors.
Indispensable, I'd say. Especially where plugging something directly into the grid is impractical or just not efficient enough. That's a nuance definitely worth noting. For Man's Answers, it shows complexity beyond just renewables.
Right. Okay, so we need widespread electrification and we need hydrogen for industry. But then there's the sheer scale. India's energy needs are going to grow massively, aren't they?
Oh, significantly. As the economy develops, as we aim for net zero itself, which often involves more electrification, the demand for power is projected to, surge.
And solar, wind, hydro.
Yeah.
They're vital, obviously, but can they meet that kind of surge alone?
Well, that's the challenge. They're crucial, absolutely central. But meeting that constantly growing demand and providing stable power 24/7, that's where they likely need help.
That brings us to nuclear.
Exactly. Nuclear energy steps in as that essential complement. It provides stable, continuous power, baseload power, essentially. Very important for a growing economy.
And the government seems to be leaning into this. I saw the 100-gigawatt target.
Yes, a very ambitious goal. 100 GW of installed nuclear capacity by 2047, and the Nuclear Power Corporation of India, NPCIL, is tasked with making that happen.
How are they doing that? What's being built?
Well, a key part of the strategy, and maybe something for prelims focus, is the deployment of pressurized heavy water reactors, PHWRs.
Yep.
India has strong indigenous capability here.
Right.
There are plans for a whole fleet, 26 units, I believe, rated at 700 megawatts each across Gujarat, Rajasthan, Haryana.
Okay.
And beyond that, they're also developing smaller reactors, the 220 milliW small reactors, or BSRs. These are interesting because they're potentially for captive use, like powering industrial hubs directly, shows real self-reliance developing.
So the future grid looks like lots more solar, lots more wind, but also a big chunk of nuclear.
That seems to be the plan.
But putting all that together, managing it, that sounds complex. Ensuring the lights stay on when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing.
It introduces, significant operational challenges. Grid stability is paramount. It's a key infrastructure issue for UPSC focus.
How is it different from now?
Well, think about the current system, dominated by coal and gas. Balancing supply and demand, while complex, is relatively straightforward. You can ramp those plans up or down fairly easily.
Okay.
But a grid with lots of solar, wind, hydro, and nuclear, that's a different beast altogether.
Because solar and wind are variable.
Highly variable, yes. Intermittent, solar peaks midday, zero at night. Wind. Well, it depends entirely on location, season, weather. Hydro is more consistent, but, depends on geography and rainfall season.
And nuclear. You said it's stable, which sounds good for balancing, though.
It is stable. That's its strength. but it's designed for constant output, what we call baseload. It's like a marathon runner, not a sprinter. It likes to run at a steady pace.
So you can't just easily dial a nuclear plant up and down to match the fluctuations from renewables.
Not easily, no. Trying to flex nuclear output like that runs into problems.
What kind of problem?
Both technical and economic, actually. Technically, changing power levels frequently is complex for reactor physics, for fuel management. It's not designed for that kind of operation.
And economically.
Well, these plants cost a lot to build. Huge capital investments. They make financial sense when they run constantly, close to full capacity, selling as much power as possible. Running them at partial load just kills the economics. Your costs don't drop much, but your revenue does.
Okay, so that's a real constraint. We have variable renewables, steady nuclear. How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah.
How do we keep the grid stable without just falling back on fossil fuels for backup?
This is where hydrogen, produced in a specific way, comes back into the picture as a potential, really innovative solution. Hydrogen via electrolysis.
Electrolysis, using electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen.
Exactly. And the key here is using surplus renewable electricity. Think of electrolyzers connected to the grid as flexible loads.
Flexible loads, you mean they can be turned on and off easily?
Precisely. So when you have, say, a huge surge of solar power midday, more than the grid needs right then,
Instead of just wasting it or curtailing the solar farm.
you divert that excess, cheap, clean electricity to the electrolyzers and make hydrogen.
Ah, I see. So the electrolyzer absorbs the excess power, helping to balance the grid.
Yes. It smooths things out, it prevents wasting renewable energy, and helps stabilize the grid without needing the nuclear plants to fluctuate inefficiently.
And the hydrogen you produce.
That hydrogen is now stored energy. It's a versatile fuel, an energy carrier, and as we discussed, a crucial industrial feedstock. So these grid-connected electrolyzers effectively decouple immediate electricity supply from demand.
They create a buffer.
Exactly. A buffer using surplus clean energy. It enhances grid reliability, stores energy for later use, and helps reduce emissions overall. This interplay between the electricity grid and hydrogen production, that's a really key concept for understanding India's sustainable development path, something UPSC aspirants should definitely grasp.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together. India's road to net zero. It's clearly not just one thing. It needs more electrification, yes, but also this really strategic use of hydrogen, especially in industry.
Right.
Then there's the need for stable, large-scale power, where nuclear plays a critical role alongside renewables to meet that growing demand.
Absolutely.
And finally, managing the grid with all these different sources. Hydrogen electrolysis emerges as this clever way to add flexibility, absorb surplus renewables, and help keep everything stable.
That sums it up well. It really highlights the need for a coordinated, integrated approach. You can't just look at generation or industry or the grid in isolation. It all has to work together.
Which implies policy is going to be incredibly important.
Crucial things like, how we define different types of hydrogen, green hydrogen from renewables, for instance, and policies that actively promote these integrated energy solutions, connecting electrolyzers to the grid, linking hydrogen producers with industrial users.
Right. Which leads to, I suppose, a final thought for our listeners, particularly those preparing for UPSC exams. Given the sheer scale of India's energy needs, the complexity of managing this new kind of grid, what specific policy levers, what interventions do you think will be the most critical to really make this integration of nuclear, hydrogen, and renewables work effectively? It's a tough question, but central to India's future.
A very pertinent question to reflect on.
Definitely something to chew on as you follow current events. For more deep dives like this one, please do like and subscribe, and we'd love to hear your thoughts or questions in the comments below. And just a reminder, the insights we discussed today were drawn from reporting and analysis in the Hindu. Thanks for joining us.